Okay, here's the thing. I think the Force is one of the scariest things ever put in a movie, and I think I can prove it. Star Wars, this already feels weird. Star Wars was a movie from 1977 written and directed by a young buck named George Lucas. There's like 7 movies and a bunch of other stuff like Lunchbox. Am I explaining Star Wars? You guys know what a Star War is. I mean, it's Star Wars. For the purposes of this analysis, all of my thoughts on the film will be specifically about the Force and how it works within the film universe. Obi-Wan explains it as so.
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together.
Outside of the fact that an old man is telling a young boy that something is about to surround and penetrate them. Oh, I'm sorry. That was too far. Huh? My lawyer's on the phone? Yeah, hello? Slow down. Yeah, I know. I mean, I said it. I didn't think. Yeah, I didn't say it in that way. No, you go. No, I was like, this is my show, you know. It's like I say something stupid, and I begrudgingly walk it back in a slightly drunk sounding. But yeah, no, I know that's meta to explain it so blatantly. Here's the thing about the Force. By the time we get to A New Hope, the galaxy and possibly universe has moved on from celebrating or worshipping it in any way. Between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, somehow a planet made entirely of one city whose entire government and rule of law is based on this religion has moved on to such an degree that most people either A, don't believe it even exists, and B, just openly mock it to the face of what should be the scariest person in the galaxy.
Don't try to frighten us with your sorcerer's ways, Lord Vader. Your sad devotion to that ancient religion has not helped you conjure up this.
And that's not even why it's f***ed up. Think about the implications here. The Force has a dark side and a light side, and is supposedly made up of energy from every living creature in the galaxy. Outside of the prequels, which are not going to come out of this without a few extra bruises on their already wholly ruined epidermis, we see the Force as fairly balanced, even prophesized to basically always returning to an even level whenever it becomes imbalanced. Which is weird when you really consider what that means. Outside of the fact that moral relativism cannot exist in any way within this system, the implication that the grand sum of every living thing in the galaxy is ultimately balanced as equally good and evil. What the hell does that say about sentient beings, because they are absolutely outnumbered by the grand total of every plant, animal, and fungus in the entire universe? That means the basic sentient heterotrophs are so overwhelmingly evil by comparison to every other living thing in the galaxy that the Force is doing an overwhelming amount of bad shit to achieve its balance. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like, I bet there was this one Jedi who actually figured this out at some point around like Revenge of the Sith. Jedi's just whistling down the hallway on her way to talk to Yoda.
Hey, so I was thinking, you guys all seem to think that Anakin is gonna bring balance to the Force?
Yes, balance he will.
Right. Yeah. So like balance is balance, right? So I was thinking, how many children does the dark side have on their side? Because we have like 20 on our side, and, balance.
I mean, how did no one ever put together that there were 400 plus Jedi in the Order and only 2 Siths? How f***ing dense are all of you? Okay, I've gotten ahead of myself because all I've really done so far is unfairly pick apart the moral fibers of a space fantasy essentially being written by a questionable mixture of authors that are not necessarily on the same page at all. At all. What I really want to talk about is how these different authors understand and approach the idea of the Force. Which brings us to Luke and how he shows us where the next 2 episodes after The Force Awakens are going to take us. The thing about the Force that is so endlessly fascinating is not that it makes you a superhero. It's that the more of it you use, the more it tempts you by the darker, more sinister aspects of it. We meet Luke when he's a doe-eyed farm boy trying to pick up some power converters at Tossie Station.
Like a motherfucking gangster!
But by the end of his journey, he's dressed up like a groupie for Styx and considering the finer aspects of murdering his own dad, which isn't yet the fascinating part. The fascinating part is how long it takes him to make the decision because it's his own father tempting him. Only when the temptation comes from an outside force like the Emperor, who is, let's say for brevity's sake, cartoonishly evil, causes not only Luke to decide to commit to the light side, but so does Vader as well in the same scene. The Emperor's mere interactions with him pushes them both back to the light side, and Vader, whom I think above all else is just exhausted by this whole affair and just kind of decides to die. Where have we seen that before? And here's the important distinction for me. I think an overwhelming reason that the prequels just don't hold up is that no one is really ever tempted by the dark side of the Force. All of the Jedi are stoic and boring and don't allow themselves to love or get angry or be afraid or basically do anything other than sit in chairs and talk about designing women reruns on Lifetime, because pretty much all other paths of normal, empathetic humanity lead to the dark side. They're boring. Anakin never showcases any aspect of actual temptation. The Force didn't tempt him at all because the first time he murders men, women, and children, it was out of love, actually, for his mother. But like that revenge kind of love that makes you, like, shout no in the rain and then kill like a lot of people that are possibly only tangentially related to the thing that made you mad. The easiest way to illustrate the comparison is to look at the mental anguish that Kylo Ren goes through in The Force Awakens and compare it to Anakin. Kylo is really the living embodiment of temptation as we see him openly struggle and be tortured by both sides of the Force equally. He's also easily the strongest Force user we've ever seen because he's using both sides of it. Dude's f***ing stopping blaster bolts in the air and walking around like he's Shane from Shane. I'm not sure George Lucas has any amount of grasp on this whatsoever, and I'm not trying to bag on him because he's a huge part of why Star Wars exists in the first place, but he's certainly not the only person that shaped it into what we know today, and this is where things take a turn. When the original trilogy came out, it was much more of the collective vision of Lucas, Kasdan, Burt, Kirshner, Kurtz, McQuarrie, and Williams. But when you look at Anakin in the prequels, where most of those people are gone, both Anakin and George are tempted by exactly the same aspect of the dark side. Anakin, I believe, is simply a microcosm for the exact reason the prequels aren't any good. Neither Anakin or George is capable of accepting feedback. This is practically Anakin's main temptation. He's arrogant, thinks he's never wrong, and coldly downplays the influence of others, even in situations where it makes objective sense to do so. Like child murder is one of those aspects. And having all of this out of the way leads me to the more pontification-y aspects of this episode. If you'll indulge me, I have some ideas on what could have made the Star Wars prequels actually work.
Here we go.
Obviously, I'm also a writer, and I write things that you may have read or watched or loved, but here you go. I'm going to try to fix the prequels now using everything we just talked about. So, okay, just from a high-level perspective, if the Jedi had seemed more like people, you know, emotionally struggling with key aspects of their lives outside of their Jedi 9 to 5, because that's where conflict comes from. I think the fumble is honestly, for the most part, on Obi-Wan of all people. Imagine if we met him in The Phantom Menace, if he was struggling against the dark side of the Force, and ultimately, with the loss of Qui-Gon, whatever, he gives in fully and goes full badass dark side, light side, chaotic, neutral face melter. You know, like he's not evil or good, he's just selfish as shit. A Jedi, sure, but an anti-hero that just happens to be around Anakin, not training him. And don't try and tell me that Obi-Wan would never do that, because the first time we met him, he was in self-imposed isolation for 20 years, and nobody does that if they ain't seen some shit. If Anakin in Attack of the Clones got his Padawan and we watched their relationship grow and develop over 2 films between Master and Apprentice, Anakin is always telling little Weston, "Her name is Weston in this hypothetical, everybody. Everybody got it? It's Weston?" Okay. But he's saying, the dark side will always tempt you. Like he's the most goody two-shoes person of all time, and he knows how strong the pull is. So he never, ever, ever touches that side of the Force, which actually makes him weaker than everybody else. I think the temptations of the dark side are more clear to an audience when they have a well-illustrated effect. Anakin is constantly seeing Obi-Wan use his powers for fun and showing off, so he finally starts to give in a little. Just a little. This basically makes Obi-Wan a horrible influence, and everyone knows it, and they're constantly warning him to stay away from him. And Anakin falls completely off the wagon as a result of this. Even Obi-Wan stops and is like,
Yo, damn, dude, slow down, man.
"You're gonna get somebody killed." But Anakin won't listen. He's in. This is all he's ever wanted. He just feels so good. And the Jedi Order doesn't know what to do. They even take his student Weston away from him because they can no longer trust him. They even try to expel him from the Jedi Order. So Anakin goes apeshit, and the dark side just devours him. No one can talk sense into him. He sends a few of the Jedis to the hospital, and in his darkest moments, it is Weston that tries to talk some sense into him. And he kills her. There's your tragedy. He doesn't really do it on purpose, it just sort of happens. And in this tragedy, we realize that the grand total of events that made up this trilogy of films, maybe it added up to something different than we thought it did. And within this careless vacuum that is the Force needing to balance itself out between light and darkness, because it obviously has no moral standing in this argument, maybe we're looking at all of this the wrong way. If the Force has to always balance itself out, what if the thing that Anakin was always fated to do, what if the thing he was meant to do was not join and lead the dark side? What if his entire role in maintaining this rigid, soulless balance in the universe, what if his entire goal was simply to subtract light? Thanks everybody for checking out another episode of Movies with Mikey. That was Star Wars. That was a little surprise episode. Be sure to like, subscribe, and all the YouTube stuff that I don't know what it is or what it does, but apparently it helps me make money. How much money? Did we make any money?
Yeah, buckle.
Yeah, a guy walked in and told me we did. So that's great. We're still voting on the next episode of the actual show. So those three options are right here. Boop, boop, boop. There you go.
Where do you want me to put this money bucket?
Just put the money bucket anywhere. You can just put the money bucket anywhere.